Hello friends, welcome to How Did I Get Here, the series where I talk about the last 5 years of my life being homeless and my travels. So today we're going to talk about Texas. This might be a little bit of a long one because a lot of stuff happened in Texas. I was in Texas for quite a while because I actually ended up getting a little bit of a full-time job at some point. But first, let's talk about the start. So I got into Texas. I remember the first thing that happened in Texas was I was in a small little town and I got a little bit of work with a guy. There was a crew basically picking up sticks. They were doing like some tree work, and I had picked up some sticks with them. And the guy who's talking to me is like, we got to go do some things. Meet us at this motel, and just hang out for the night. We'll get some food and stuff. All right. So I go back at night, and they're right outside the motel. They got a campfire going and everything, which was a little odd, but yeah, they had a campfire going. I sat down with them, talked to them for a couple hours. They gave me some food. The one guy, he actually gave me an old phone. This is like an old Samsung, like A1 or A3 phone. Like it was a low grade kind of phone. But I thought, backup phone's backup phone. And this would come in handy later on in Texas for things that still make me sad to this day. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So, I said my goodbyes to them, slept for the night. And when I came into Texas, I was basically parallel with Dallas, but I didn't want to walk through Dallas. I had a buddy down in Austin, and him and his mom, they offered me a couch to sleep on for a little bit. So I went south to Austin, Texas. Before I got to Austin, Texas, a few things happened. It's beginning to rain. And we'll see how bad the rain gets. I don't mind sitting in the rain a little bit. So before I got to Austin, Texas, two things happened. The first thing was I was sitting at a rest stop and there was just a fire on the side of the road. So Texas, very dry most of the time. And I mean, I don't know. I can only make assumptions as to what happened, but I'm sitting at the rest stop and I look over and an entire field is on fire, just like that. I can kind of assume maybe somebody like threw a cigarette out or something and out of their car and that caught fire. See, that was interesting. I got to watch like an entire like grassland like just go up in flames. Luckily it wasn't like farmland or anything. It was just a grassy field. But that happened. Kept walking down south towards Austin. Before I got there, I remember this very vividly. I was sleeping under a bridge. I had just cooked up some like spaghetti and I had gone to sleep and I woke up. What I can only describe as like a pterodactyl. It obviously was not a pterodactyl, but it was a giant bird like flew right over top of me. Like I was jolted awake to just rustling in the trees and this giant bird flies over top of me. And I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because, I was having a really nice sleep and I'm just jolted awake. And I jump up and I sit up and there's like just a buck, a deer, like 10 feet away from me, staring me down. And then he turned around and left. So that was a really interesting experience. I got this giant bird that I don't know if it was only like 5 feet from my face or if it was just like extremely big, but that jolted me awake. And then there's a giant buck. It was like a 10-point buck just chilling a couple feet from me, and that was a very fun experience. After that, I go south. I finally get into Austin, meet up with my buddy Kevin. Him and his mom, they gave me a couch for like a week, so I got to just sleep on a couch for a week, eat home-cooked meals and stuff. A couple things happened in Austin. We went to, Kevin, he took me to a few trails, places like that. I remember I was walking the street at one point, and this she couldn't have been more than 100 pounds. She's like 100 pounds, under 5 feet tall woman walks up to me and she's got like a 5-inch blade knife on her, like a knife with a 5-inch blade. She walks up, she's like, "Do you have ice?" "No, I don't." And just walks away. That was an experience. It kind of freaked me out. It's weird. Another reason I just don't like cities because that happens. That's just a thing that happens. So anyway, hang out with my boy Kevin. Eventually, it's time for me to move on. I start heading west, get into Marble Falls. I got a little bit of work there. I was just right outside of a Walmart, hanging out, charging my phone up with my solar panel. And a big 18-wheeler truck parks right next to me. Guy comes out, he's like, "Hey, you want to make some money?" Yeah, sure. And for some reason, I'm telling this one because this was just kind of weird for me. The 18-wheeler was a moving truck, but it was a big regular 18-wheeler truck. And we moved all of the stuff, all the furniture stuff out of the 18-wheeler into a smaller, like, U-Haul truck. Then we drove the U-Haul truck to the place we were moving it to and unloaded it, put it in there. And I made a few $100 there. So after Marble Falls, a couple things happened. Eventually, I ended up in San Angelo, Texas. And I spent quite a long time in San Angelo. So I wasn't supposed to. I was, again, sitting outside of a Walmart. The reason I sat outside of Walmart so often is because they just didn't care. When I say I was sitting outside of Walmart, like, I'm in, like, off to the side in the parking lot. Like, I'm not near the Walmart itself, but I'm just sitting there. I got my solar panel out and charging. And the truck pulls up to me. He's like, you want to work? Heck yeah, I want to work. And he's like, all right. And he gives me a phone number. He's like, or no, I gave him my phone number. He's like, okay, we'll call you around 7 a.m. Is that okay? Yeah, it's cool. I go to sleep. I wake up, 7 a.m., get a phone call. And, the guy's like, my brother talked to you. Says, you want to work? It's like, yep. He drives down. He asked me, where can I pick you up at? I tell him the Walmart. He drives down to the Walmart, picks me up. And what we're doing basically is putting trailers up on blocks. So, like trailers, like actual trailers you live in, jacking them up, putting the foundations underneath it, and, lowering it back down, all that stuff. And we're doing that. And, I did that for a week. I made a little bit of money. And then another week came and I was still there. And I was there for about a month, just doing jobs like this. It wasn't always trailer stuff. Mostly trailer stuff, either putting trailers up on blocks or, one trailer we took off blocks to move to a different location. Or, if nothing was going on, he just told me, clean up the yard, the place of business. So, he was trying to get me money. He took me to a church service, which was really cool. And yeah, I spent a month there just working with this guy. He gave me like a Thanksgiving meal. Him and his wife, they gave me like a Thanksgiving dinner. Just absolutely wonderful. It was great. If I was ever going to get like a real job again, like I would be going to San Angelo and finding that guy again. I still got his number. I could always go there. But finally, I get done in San Angelo. And at this point, my backpack is getting a little rough. Here's the thing. Up until this point, I'd only bought in like very cheap backpacks because I didn't have money, right? So, I could only spend like $30 on a backpack. And when you're using a backpack for every single day, it doesn't last that long when you buy a cheap one like that. But finally, I got some like real money in my pocket because I spent a month working. And so I go out on Amazon and I order a real backpack. It was internal frame backpack. It was not a hiking backpack. It was not a hunting backpack. It was more of a military style backpack. But it had this really cool thing where, on the back of the backpack, you could expand it. And the idea behind it for like military use or tactical uses, you could put like a military helmet in there. I didn't care about that all that much. But I could just throw my solar panels there. And then, if I decide to take a break somewhere, I just have to pull them out, lay them out, charge my stuff up. I don't have to go digging in my backpack. So I got this backpack. Absolutely my favorite backpack. Except maybe my current external frame backpack. It isn't a lot more comfortable. One I have now, it's a lot more comfortable. But this backpack, it was amazing. I could carry anything I wanted. I remember somebody bought me a 24 case of water. A case of 24 water bottles. And I was able to get all of that in the backpack, along with the rest of my gear. And it also had like MOLLE webbing on it. And I had a few MOLLE accessories already, because my 100 backpack also had that. And it was just delightful. I love that backpack, So I get that backpack, and I'm in Midland. I pick it up in Midland, Texas. Never forget Midland. Midland is not a big city. It's a decent-sized city, but it was a really nice city. Normally I have bad experiences in big cities. This one was a really nice city, actually. I had no problems here. And I spent about a week there because it was so cold and I didn't feel like going anywhere. And it was also Christmas. I slept in like, they're not sewer pipes, but they were drainage pipes. They were giant drainage pipes. And I slept in there. And it was really good because it protected me from the wind. Because Midland it was December. It was so windy. I remember it was so windy. It was frigid cold. And I was in those pipes, those drainage pipes, and that completely protected me from all the wind. And I stayed warm. And, you know, at this point, I still have my 32-degree sleeping bag. It was nice. Midland did me good. A lot of nice people in Midland, I remember. A lot of people. It was Christmas time, and yeah, people giving me food and stuff. That was really nice. So I ended up leaving Midland, and I remember the next big thing that happened was I got caught in a snowstorm. It was the first time on this entire journey I had gotten caught in snow because, you know, previously I'd started in West Virginia, but I walked south and I was able to outrun the snow. But I'm in a town. I don't remember what town it was. It was somewhat small. And I'm under this bridge and it starts snowing. And I'm good. I'm pretty good. You know, the water level under the bridge is good. The snow's not getting to me. And I waited out for a day. And you know, I don't know if this is normal in Texas or what. Maybe this is abnormality, but like it snowed for one day, and then after that day, the snow. So I kept walking. I continued west, and then a couple of things happened. So, first off, I started getting into the part of Texas that was very not populated, so to speak. So I would go 60, 50 miles without any kind of like civilization. At this point, I'm walking the interstate, which is legal in Texas. At least it is in this part of Texas. And I'm getting closer to El Paso, which means I'm very close to the border. And this was by design. I wanted to see the border, all right? It was just on my bucket list. And, you know, I had ran into Border Patrol a few times. They never hassled me at all. I remember one time I was walking the interstate, and I ended up getting off the interstate and sitting down underneath, like, this little underpass. It was kind of like a drainage thing. And I guess somebody had saw me and called Border Patrol. Because, you know, I'm sitting down there, I'm hanging out, and Border Patrol comes down. And they look at me. I'm like, I'm okay. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, you have an ID? Yeah, I got an ID. Give him my ID. Okay, you're an American citizen. And, you know, I had a few times, you know, Border Patrol drive up to me. Normally, they just look at me, and, you know, you're good to go. Yeah, never had a problem with Border Patrol. Never had a problem with police, you know, in the Texas border or anywhere in Texas. Never had police anywhere. Never had a problem with police anywhere. Another thing that happened, and I've told the story a few times, but I'm going to tell it again. I was walking on the interstate, and again, there's like 50 miles in between gas stations and stuff. And I'm at a point where I've run out of money, and I've run out of food. And, you know, I've still got tap water. And I remember I get to this gas station, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sit out here. I'm going to set up my solar panel. You know, I got to charge up. Maybe somebody will drop me $10 so I can get some peanut butter, right? It happens. So I set my solar panel up. I'm charging up. Nobody comes. I'm very hungry. Next gas station is like 50 miles away. Finally, I pack up. I'm like, it's almost nightfall. The sun is starting to set, and I pack up because I got to find a place to sleep. And I'll just continue on to the next gas station. We'll see what happens. I walk for maybe 10 minutes, and there's a $20 bill on the ground. This ain't the first time this has happened. There's been many a times before this and after this where only when I need it, I will find money on the ground. And I picked up that $20 bill, and I walked back, and I bought some peanut butter and some ramen noodles, and continued down the road. That $20, you know, lasts me like 2 weeks. Maybe not 2 weeks. Yeah, about 2 weeks. That $20 maybe lasts me like 2 weeks. You know, because I just, at that point, I was living off a diet of peanut butter and ramen noodles. And then I got to El Paso. And I was so close to getting to New Mexico without anything, you know, bad happening. With this just being the best state in the world, nothing bad happens. But while I was in El Paso, I got to El Paso. I was sleeping underneath a bridge, and I have my Pixel 4, and I'm not 100% sure what happened, But what I think happened was I went to sleep and it started to update. My Pixel 4, it started to auto update. And then while it was auto updating, the battery died. Because I woke up and I turned my Pixel 4 on, my phone, and it was like corrupt. I couldn't even factory reset it. I tried, everything I could to factory reset it. I even bought a USB-C flash drive, and I plugged it in. I loaded up a I guess it's firmware update. It's not a firmware update. I loaded up I uploaded the Android image file to that USB stick because I had my old phone. I went on to Google, plugged it in, transferred it over, then turned my Pixel phone on. It went into the BIOS or whatever. I don't know what it's technically called on the phone. I'm gonna call it a BIOS. And I select install files from SD card, and I couldn't even flash a new ROM on that way. The only way you could do it is if you had a computer and you use ADB. So I was like, oh, I need a computer now. And I remember I was looking on Facebook Marketplace, just trying to find a cheap $10 computer, because all I had to do was plug the phone into a computer, go into the command prompt. I would need to download the Android develop system, the Android development thing, and put in a few ABD commands, and side load a new Android onto it. A very easy process, at least for me, but I couldn't find a computer. So I was like, well, this sucks. I transferred my SIM card over to the new Samsung phone that I had gotten from the guy at the very start of Texas. So that guy saved me, pretty much. Thank goodness he gave me that old phone, and it was not a good phone, but it did what I needed it to do, which was load up Google Maps. And yeah, my Pixel 4 stayed bricked for many, many months. I did finally get it fixed in California, but that's a story for another time. I'm in El Paso at this point. I've done everything I can to try and fix my Pixel. It ain't gonna get fixed. Pack up, and I head to New Mexico. And next video will be all about New Mexico and Arizona, where I experienced not only snow, but also 110 degrees. So that's nice. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to support me, links are in the description. Peace out, everybody.